So the key point here is, look, we're positive on the sector at current share prices, and the key reason is because we believe the asset quality damage that's being factored into current share prices is overdone. And I know to many that will sound like a bold call. In any positive view, I suppose, will be taken to be a bold call in this sort of environment with all the risks lurking around. That is our view, and it's based on the fact that, if I take a look at what the bank's current provisioning levels are at the moment, I think the actual current provision levels can actually be justified in light of the macro data that has emerged over the last month since the banks have reported. If I take a look at what the consumer sentiment index has done, it's done a nice, very, very nice, healthy rebound over the last month, and it's only now 2% below its pre-COVID levels. The unemployment rate, although it's up to 7.1%, it's well within the base case scenarios of the banks. The banks are assuming, a peak unemployment rate at least of 8.8%. I think the most mild forecast there from the major banks is about 8.8%. So that 7.1 is still considerably below that. At the same time, if I take a look at what loan deferrals are doing, home loan deferrals are now well and truly showing signs of, flattening out, plateauing, and we're seeing a similar thing in business loan deferrals. So with some of these key data points in mind, I think it's still pretty easy to justify the bank's current provision levels. Having said that, there's obviously a lot of uncertainty with regards to the outlook for asset quality, because there's a lot of uncertainty about the macroeconomic outlook, and because of that reason, we're certainly being more conservative with our credit impairment charge forecasts than what the banks are implying. In fact, our credit impairment charge forecasts are so conservative that we're even more conservative than the bank's downside scenarios for asset quality. So we feel there's enough conservatism in our bad debt charge forecast for the moment. Now, having said that, if I take a look at consensus is far more pessimistic than even our forecast. So to say that in order again, I think the current provision of the banks are still justified. Our forecasts are even more conservative than the bank's downside scenarios, and then consensus is even more pessimistic than our forecast. And then the damage that I think is being factored into current share prices is even more pessimistic than consensus. And so really putting all of that together, I really do think the damage being factored into current share prices is overdone. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, okay, what happens come the end of September once JobKeeper and some of the other support measures and even the loan repayment holidays come to an end? What happens then? To give you a short summary of my view on that, look, firstly, at the moment, we've got about 10% of home loan borrowers in hardship at the moment. Now, it's staying flat at that level. It's been flat at that level for about 2 or 3 weeks. So hopefully we're close to the peak in that. Now, so at this case, a drastic scenario would be that come the end of September, home loan hardship remains at 10%. Now, if it remains at 10%, I really do not envisage the banks foreclosing on 1 in 10 home loan borrowers. I just don't think that's going to happen. And so if we get to the end of September and if home loan hardship levels are 10% and if unemployment if unemployment is at a very high level, I don't expect the support measures to end. I think they'll be extended. So I think the banks will extend their support measures, and I think the government will extend their support measures because, quite frankly, there's no other route. There won't be too much of an option otherwise. So that's my view on what would happen come into September. Now, obviously, as long as a second wave doesn't emerge in Australia, and I'm cognizant that 1 or 2 states have talked about tightening up their restrictions again. As long as we don't get a second wave again, then what's going to happen is we should have businesses opening well before that September deadline, and obviously businesses starting to come all back online now anyway, or physically opening up, and by opening up now or over the next month, that gives them still 2 or 3 months of support of JobKeeper. So it allows businesses to get that cash flow assistance that they need in that initial phase of the recovery. So from that perspective, things are turning out well. And if we go back to what we were thinking 2 months ago, that the government had prepared all our mindsets to expect a 6-month lockdown. And so compared to 2 months ago, I think there's no doubt that the outlooks for Australia and New Zealand have improved, and therefore the asset quality outlook has improved. But I think the damage being factored into share prices is just too overdone right now. And so that's the key reason for the positive view on the sector. Now, within the sector, Westpac remains our clear preferred major bank, and I think the damage being priced in for Westpac, if you take a look at, if you take a look at the report we've put out, the table right at the bottom of page 5, that will summarise the damage that we think is being priced in for each bank. And I think the damage being priced in for Westpac is well and truly overdone. In fact, Westpac is the only major bank where the asset quality damage being priced in is even more than what was experienced during the GFC. CBA, on the other hand, has got, the amount of damage priced in there is significantly lower than what's being factored in for the other major banks. And although CBA, I do say CBA it has got the best risk profile and they've got a pretty good retail franchise, it doesn't justify that gap between, that optimism that's being priced in for CBA versus the other major banks. From that perspective as well, Westpac is the clear preferred. CBA is the least preferred. I just think CBA is it's not looking cheap. And when I say, when I was speaking about the sector and saying the damage priced in is overdone, that's with the exception of CBA. CBA, I don't think the damage priced in is overdone there at all. So the ranking is Westpac, followed by ANZ, NAB, and CBA is the least preferred. We've got other recommendations on Westpac, ANZ, and NAB, and CBA as a whole.